Hello.
Wow.
I got there before you did.
How about that? How about that? I had this whole big introduction planned, you know what I mean? To build up the suspense, and then boom, you got there before me.
Go ahead, start it off.
All right, so apparently there's two streams running, so let's address that first. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I guess on YouTube there are two links, two videos.
Okay. Well,
I think some people are waiting on the other one, so we're
uh,
trying to get them over here.
okay, great. All right, cool. Well, welcome everybody to Rhythm Guitar Talk Live with my guest Tom Hess. How you doing today, Tom? I'm still going to do the whole intro for you.
Whatever. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks.
All right. So let's talk about Tom Hess, my special guest. I've known Tom Hess for about 10 years now. We actually met out on the road. He is a virtuoso guitar player. He has played in front of hundreds of thousands of people with various different bands. Okay. He also is a master guitar teacher and trainer. He's taught thousands of guitar students online and at his live events. And in addition to that, he also has a career mentoring and guitar teacher mentoring program. So, with all of that said, here's Tom Hess.
That's a very nice intro. You got some pictures together. It was very nice.
Yeah, that was cool, man.
That was very
very
cool.
Yeah,
Very nice.
absolutely. So, today's topic that I suggested is the most common rhythm guitar mistakes that most guitar players make, and how do we fix them? So, I came up with a list of things. I know you had a chance to check it out. These are the things that I find that are typically the most common things that doesn't even matter if you're a beginner, intermediate. You can even be a more advanced player and still have like that one hole you need to plug kind of thing in the boat. So the first thing that I actually would like to talk about. Oh, before we even get into that, if you're in the chat, let us know where you're at. Okay. And then if you do have any questions, put them in the chat as well, and we'll try to get to them later. So anyways, the first thing that I'd like to talk about today with you is inconsistent timing, whether that's playing ahead of the beat, behind the beat, or varying between the two. Typically, what I find is varying between the two, meaning that you can't play consistently on tempo, right on time. And there's like this wavering between the two. Do you find that with a lot of your students as well?
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, you've got, if I draw a picture of a line that represents the beat. Okay. So if you were looking at like a computer, if you were in Pro Tools or any recording software, and this is where the tempo is, this is where the beat is. Okay. Some people will play, ahead. Some people will play behind. And some people, it's like all over the place. One note they're ahead, and next time they're behind, etc. So the first challenge here is that many people don't know. They can't hear that they're not playing in time. They kind of think they're playing in time, but they're not really sure. And that's the worst. When you don't know, am I on time or not? And then if I'm not, am I too early? Am I too late? You can't fix it if you don't know, A, that there's a problem, and two, where the problem is. If I'm consistently ahead of the beat, that's a problem. If I'm consistently behind, that's a problem. Or if I'm all over the place, that's a much worse problem. Okay. So the first thing I would suggest for people to do is play along to a click track or a MIDI file or whatever. Okay. Drum track. Do that, then record yourself playing. And what you want to look for are patterns. You want to see, is there a pattern? First of all, am I on time or not? The answer is probably no. If you have to ask the question, the answer is probably no. Because if you're dead on time, you're dead on time. Okay. But if these are the beats and you find yourself consistently playing on the left side, you see the guitar come in before the beats, then you are a rusher. If you are behind on the right side of the beats, you are a dragger. So you are a rusher or a dragger. And if you don't know the difference, there's a great movie called Whiplash. It's on Netflix right now. It is not kid appropriate, by the way, but it's about a drummer. It's an awesome movie. It's every musician's got to see Whiplash. Okay, and there's a scene in there where it's a professor teaching a jazz band how to play. There's a drummer that he's given a hard time to, and he asks the drummer, "Are you a rusher or are you a dragger?" Okay, anyway, go see the movie. It's awesome. Now, if you are consistently ahead, you're rushing. Okay, and to solve that, what we want to do is just try to relax more. Okay, so if you're tapping your foot or bopping your head to the beat or whatever, instead of doing that on every beat, try doing it every other beat. Say 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're trying to feel the music in halftime. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. You're trying to relax by feeling the beat in halftime. Okay. If you're on the other, that's what I would do to start. If you are a rusher, you're ahead of the beat consistently. If you are a dragger, okay, you're on the other side, you're over here. Okay, if that's you, then you're playing you're being too lazy. Okay, and we want to increase the adrenaline a little bit. You might want to feel the tempo in double time, 1 and 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and to try to feel. We're trying to get you to rush a little more to get onto the beat. So those are ways that can help. Now, if you find yourself that it's all over the place, on one beat you were early, the next beat you were late, the next 2 beats you were early, the next 4 you were late, that's a harder problem to solve. It's solvable. It's still solvable, but it's a little harder because now we can't use the feel in halftime or feel in double time trick to kind of get you to play on the beat. Okay. So the first thing that happens is if you're all over the place, there's a good chance that you're not tapping your foot. You're internally, you don't have the clock going. You're just kind of listening to the drums or to the metronome, and you're kind of approximating where you're supposed to play. Okay. It's kind of like guessing. You're not really feeling what's happening. Okay. So there's really 2 components here. First, you have to feel exactly where the beat is. You can't just listen and kind of guess. You want to start feeling that, and tapping your foot or clapping your hands away from the guitar will help you to do that. Okay. Feeling where the beat is. Then the second is executing on the beat. So those are 2 different things. First, you got to feel it. Then you got to be able to do something on that beat. In other words, you're trying to synchronize what your hands do with what you hopefully are internalizing the feeling. So if you don't internalize, it doesn't matter what your hands do because it's going to be off because you're just guessing where you're supposed to play. You're approximating. Feel it here first, okay? And then we want to synchronize, just like you can synchronize, your hands clapping like every little kid can do. You can, once you know where the beat is, you can do that. Okay, now we have to synchronize exactly where you're strumming or picking or whatever. And we want to just go slow. Tap your foot if you want. And we're trying to line up the foot coming down with the pick hitting the strings. And hopefully your hand is already there on the notes of the chords. Okay. But the point is, you want to record yourself, then look at the screen. The screen will tell you, your eyeballs will tell you immediately if you were ahead or behind, if you're on time or you're not. So even if you're not sure by listening, am I really on time? Am I really on the beat or not? But I'm not really sure. I don't really know. If that's you, the computer will show you. You will see it visually. Here's the beat and here's where I played. Or here's the beat and here's where I played. Okay. So that will confirm for you if and when you're on the beats. Now, if you're all over the place, sometimes you'll be early, sometimes you'll be late, and sometimes you'll be right on the money. You'll be right on the beat. And then what you want to do there is you want to listen to what that sounds like and compare it to what it sounds like when it's off. And there's an artificial way that you can do this. Okay. So if you record yourself with the beat, with the drum beat, with a metronome or whatever, and let's say you just do quarter notes. You're holding out a power chord or whatever, and you're doing quarter notes. All right. Now, let's assume for the moment that when you do that, the timing is off. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. It's all over the place. Here's what you do. You use the edit function. Okay. Let's say you were here. These X's represent where you actually played. Okay. Not on the beats. Okay. You go in and you edit this. You cut it here and you move this until it's exactly on the beat. You just move it over. Here you were too late. You edit this one and you drag it so it starts exactly on the beat. And you go and you artificially fix this. Okay. You're editing this. Okay. So they all line up. Now, once you've got it lined up, put your guitar down. Okay. And you play it and you just listen. And what you want to listen for is you're trying to train your ear. Oh, this is what it sounds like when I'm playing on the beat. When I recorded it, it wasn't correct. But now that I've edited and forced every hit to be correct, now I can learn to hear what it should sound like. Okay. Because you want to train your ear, train your mind to know the difference. You can go back and listen to the original, the unedited one, before you edited this, and you can hear how it sounds different and it feels different when you're hearing when it's off compared to what it sounds and feels like when you've edited and made it perfect. And what we want to do is once you're listening to the perfect version, we want to go back and try and record again, listening to the beat, listening to your edited perfect version. Okay. And then we're going to go back and we're going to try and duplicate that. We want to recreate that same feeling. Now, if you get it wrong the first few times you try it, it just means you're a normal human being like everybody else. Okay. Don't expect to get this perfectly. If you're playing out of time, it's not going to be fixed in 5 minutes. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some practice. But it's going to take some deliberate practice on your part. Okay. Now, the next question, I guess, is it worth doing all this work? Is it worth fixing? Well, gee, I don't know. We can have a whole lifetime of playing out of time, or we can have a whole lifetime of playing in time. Guess which one's better? Guess which one sounds better? Guess which one impresses people more? And guess which one makes playing guitar way more fun? Why would it be more fun? Because number one, you know you're doing the right thing. But number two, you will get a greater emotional response from your own playing when things are on time. Okay. Or the timing is where you want it to be. Okay. You will enjoy playing so much more because it feels better. Okay. No, I mean, mistakes don't feel that great. Okay. Really good playing feels great. So that's what I'm going to have to say on that, Mark. That plus go see Whiplash. It's on Netflix right now. Oh, you're muted, buddy.
I like what you said. It takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight. It needs to be learned. Another big thing that you brought up was most people aren't tapping their foot when they're doing this. And what I found is I have the saying, if you could say it, you could play it, but it really isn't a matter of saying it. You need to internalize the tempo in some way. So tapping your foot, if you're working on a strumming pattern or something, I say you to play it, but that having another physical motion happen in addition to playing guitar really kind of like locks it in. I mean, it's the oldest thing. Tap your foot, tap your foot, tap your foot, tap your foot. But it hasn't been said forever and over again, and will be in the future. If it is the simplest, most effective way to fix it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the second thing, though, that I would like to get your opinion on is sloppy chord changes. So transitions between basically just chords in general, not different techniques yet, but chords in general. How can somebody do something? Is there a system? Is there a procedure? Is there a way to approach it consistently to most effectively smooth out difficult chord changes?
Sure. Yeah, of course. So, first of all, the good news is there's no excuse. You got no excuse for not being able to change chords cleanly and in time. Why is there no excuse? Because it's really easy. Okay. Now, I realize and I understand and respect the fact that some people struggle with this. So I'm not criticizing those people or calling them stupid or anything. What I'm saying is there is a solution. The solution is simple. Anybody can do the solution and anybody can fix this problem. Okay. So one of the ways that this problem occurs is that when we start playing guitar, we're usually told or taught that we should start off playing slow. So you start off slow, and the idea is you start slow enough so that the movements are easy to make. Then once you get those movements correct, then you can speed up, increase the tempo, and then you can play faster, and it should sound good. Now, there's nothing wrong with that advice. The problem becomes that a lot of people don't follow that advice correctly. They don't understand what slow practice really means. Okay. So let me show you the typical problem. And this is true with rhythm guitar, lead guitar, doesn't really matter what we're playing, but you see it a lot with chord changes. Let's imagine that we're going to change, we're going to play one chord here, any chord, G, D, C, doesn't matter. And we're going to play the next chord way over here, okay? And this represents time, okay? So you've got all this time between the first chord and whatever the next chord is, all right? And this might be 5 seconds, it could be 1 second. It's some amount of time, okay? Well, the longer the time is, theoretically, that should make this easier. You got more time to prepare your mind, prepare your hands, and get from here to there. The problem is because we have so much time, people tend to move their hands in a very lazy way. Okay. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm not plugged in here, but you don't need, there's nothing to hear. You don't need to hear anything. The point is this. Let's say I'm going between two simple chords, okay? A G chord and a D chord, okay? I don't know if you can hear that, but it doesn't really matter. Just watch. So if I play the G chord, okay, and I hold it out, and now I'm going to play the D chord, because there's so much time between, I can afford, kind of, to be lazy in my motions. And that's especially true when there are open strings, because when you take your hand away, you still hear some of the open strings. The G and the G string are ringing out. So you don't really notice the silence between the chords. If you notice, if there were no open strings like this, then you notice the silence more. So what we want to do when we go slow is we want to move the hands sharply, okay? So we want to do this. Then when it's time to change chords, we want to wait to the last minute, basically, to the last moment, and move quickly all the fingers at once. We don't want to do this. Then what happens is we hear this chord maybe till about here, and then we hear a bunch of either noise or silence while we're transitioning our hand from here to here. We don't want this gap in here, okay? We don't want this transition. What we want is this. We want to hold the first chord all the way to the last possible moment, and then our transition happens right here. It's very short, going into the second chord. Now, in order to do that, we need to move our hands quickly. When I say move the hands quickly, I don't mean this. I don't mean that. We're still keeping the distance between the chords the same. We're not changing when we change the chords. Okay, you're still going to be G for whatever, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, whatever, and then D. That doesn't change, but this changes. This goes all the way to the last possible moment, and then bam, right on that D chord all at once. Back to the G chord. See, the hands are moving quickly when it's time to move. Might stay here for a long time, but when it's time to move, we move them. Okay. Same thing with the right hand. We don't want to do, and then, no, we want to cut through like a knife when practicing. So here's how much time this hand has to change the chord. When you watch this hand, once you see this hand moving to do this, by the time my hand gets from here to here, I've changed chords, okay? So this hand's going to move only when that hand moves, and it's going to move quick. That's how fast we want the change to be. So you can change with your left hand that fast. That's the goal. Now, right now, some people might not be able to do that yet, and that's okay. And here's what I would suggest to do if this is difficult to move your hands that quickly, okay, or to change chords that quickly. All right. So sometimes what people do, let's say beginners, for example, but this is true also for more advanced players too. But for beginners in particular, let's say if they were going to play the C chord, you would often see this. They put one finger down at a time and they form the chord at a time. Now, you can't, if you're fast enough, you can do that, okay? You can do this or you can do this. If you're fast enough, you can make that happen, okay? Not saying you can't. I know some people who do, and they're really good players, and they can do that. But I'm going to suggest to do this. Make the chord any chord. It could be this chord. It could be that chord. It doesn't matter what chord it is, okay? Any chord that you're working on that's a challenge for you to switch between or to just grab. I'll just stick with the C chord here. Make the chord, then relax your hand. Don't take your fingers off the strings. Just relax your fingers so they're no longer pushing down. They're not fretting the notes, but they're still touching the strings, okay? So it's like my fingers here, like my arm is the string, and the hair on my, I'm sorry, the arm is the fretboard, and the hair is the string. So I haven't pushed the hair down to the fingerboard, to the arm, okay? Same thing here. In contact with the strings, I'm touching the strings, but I'm not pushing down yet, okay? Now, once we do push down, we want to push all the fingers down at once. Squeeze at once. Then we're going to relax at once. Then squeeze at once. All the hands together, then relax together. Clamp down together, relax together, okay? But all the entire time, the fingers stay in contact with the strings. Once you can do that, squeeze together, relax together, not one at a time, all together, relax together, squeeze together, relax together, squeeze together, relax together. Okay. Same thing with this chord or any other chord. Okay. Now, once you can do that, then you want to take your fingers away from the strings, but just hover. Okay. So again, my arm is the fingerboard. The hair on my arm, I got a lot of hair on my arm. Okay. Is the top of the hair is the string. Okay. So before we were staying in contact. Now we want to bring the finger up, but not far away, not up here. Okay. Just hover in position and then come down at the same time. Come off at the same time. Down together, off together, down together, off together. And what you're doing is you're not training your hands. You're training your brain. Okay. You're training your brain to send 3 simultaneous signals from your brain down your arm to your hand into your fingers. All 3 of you guys are going to clamp down together as one unit. And now you're going to come off together as one unit. Okay. Down together, off together, down, squeeze, relax, squeeze, relax. and each time get a little further away until eventually, from an open hand, you can come and grab that chord or whatever the chord is that you want to grab all at the same time. Okay. And we want those motions to be sharp. Okay. So we'll go back to this. I want these motions to be sharp here. That's the goal that we want to get to. Now, in real life, you're not always going to play like this, right? But you want to have the ability to do that so that chord changes feel easy for you, and you can do them in time because you can get there from chord to chord in time, and you're not lagging behind. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is when you are, let's say you're strumming the chord. Okay. When you're strumming that stuff, you want to make sure that you don't start lifting your finger off too early. All right. So slow it down, sharp, crisp motions, all the hands move together. That's essentially it.
Yes. The one finger at a time thing is something that, like, for some people I find like it connects with them. And I actually have a video coming up about that. But also the squeeze and release, lifting all of your hands up and without breaking contact with the string and everything. Like, I think that those two approaches are different. Some people can do both, and it's good to do both. But for some people, they connect better with one or the other, you know? And so, I mean, if you're struggling with trying to lift all your fingers and then place them back down exactly at the same time, try the other technique. Maybe that'll work better for you. You know, the only thing about the one finger at a time is if you do get proficient at it, try to start grouping fingers together to eventually get that whole, have everything come down. So if it's like a C chord, you know, group two of your fingers together, so it's a two-step motion and not a three-step motion, and then eventually get it down to one. But yeah, one at a time. There's people that do it really, really, really fast, and they're good at it. So I can't say that's wrong.
Sure, right. And
Yeah.
there are people who can do it quickly.
Yeah.
Also, if you are going to do the one finger at a time thing, whenever that happens, you should be able to do it in both directions, because sometimes you're going to strum the chord with the downstroke. So the strings on this side of the guitar will sound first before they, or maybe you're arpeggiating or whatever. Okay. But what if it's an upstroke? If it's an upstroke, then you want to start with the fingers on that side of the guitar.
Yep.
Downstroke, I would do it this way.
Yep.
Upstroke this way. I move my fingers all at the same time. But if
Yeah.
I was going to do it one at a time, I would want to be able to do it in either direction, because sometimes we'll change chords on a downstroke, hitting these strings first and going that way. And other times on an upstroke, where you're going to hear the high strings first.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Very cool. All right. So now, how about sloppy transitions between different kinds of rhythm guitar techniques? So let's just say that you're playing power chords and then you have to go to an arpeggiating type part where, you know, a lot less brute force, a lot more finesse between, you know, like arpeggiating something as opposed to just barreling through a power chord or even a full bar chord.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of different things we can talk about with this. The transition between, let's say, can you hear that, Mark? Is that coming
Yes,
through?
perfectly.
So the starting point really here is getting control of how you're feeling. Because when you're doing this, there's more adrenaline naturally in you. So you're more excited because you're playing more excited. Your hand is moving in a more excited way. Okay, and now you're going to do something like this. You got to kind of calm down internally a little bit. Okay. Especially if you're going from something, if you're playing like metal, let's say. If I'm doing something like that, you're more aggressive here, obviously. But if you do this, it's going to sound out of control. Okay, so we have to kind of modulate or change the amount of power that we're using, particularly in the fretting hand, to kind of relax a little bit more. Not play slower or play wimpy, but we want to maintain control of how it's going to sound in the movements, especially if the dynamic level is going to come down. If you're going to play this quieter versus that, then it's about controlling yourself and how much adrenaline you're using or releasing when playing. I think that's kind of the starting point. Is you have to change how you feel as you're about to go into the next part. There's got to be a transition there. It's not purely mechanical or purely technical, because if you're still rushing forward in your mind, okay, then it's very easy to kind of overplay and sound really stiff, and it doesn't flow nice. That flows better because I'm calming myself down immediately once that transition from the heavy palm muting or fast stuff into the arpeggiated chord. So I think step one is controlling how you feel immediately, being able to flick a light switch inside. And that will help then control the technique you're using, how much power or how little power, the dynamic level, how much articulation and force, and also the speed, of course, too. Those things matter a lot. So controlling yourself, how you feel on the inside, will help make all the technical changes needed for each technique easier to execute, because you're not fighting yourself. Okay. I think of it like this. I don't want to pretend. Okay. I don't want to be all aggressive here inside myself and then pretend to be not aggressive. I can't lie to myself. I've got to get into that state of mind immediately, and then flick the switch inside, and that helps with getting the transition and the technical parts easy. Same thing between rhythm and lead. It's a similar thing. You might be real tense if you're doing, okay, but once you get into a lead part, unless you're bending a string or something, if you're playing a fast arpeggio or a scale run or whatever, you are going to want to relax your hands a lot. Otherwise, you're fighting against all that resistance that tension creates, which is not such a bad idea. It's not such a bad thing when you're playing rhythm. But when you go to lead, if it's intricate or sophisticated or hard or fast, you want to relax. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to play fast and clean through those parts. So it's the same change internally, whether we're going from rhythm to lead or heavy rhythm to, let's say, arpeggiated chords or something lighter or a quieter section.
Yep. So that was actually going to be the next question, but I knew it was going to be the same answer. It's all about control. So my next question was basically, going between rhythm and lead guitar playing, but I knew it was about tension. It's really about tension control. And it's very easy to practice something in isolation and have it down. But being able to, like you said, flick that switch and to control the tension and to feel more relaxed and to feel what the part is supposed to feel like. Like you said, the mechanics just kind of take care of themselves if you have practiced it in isolation. So you're a car guy, obviously, and you have to be able to switch gears.
Exactly.
Some gears make you go faster, some make you go slower. You know what I mean? And you have to be able to instantaneously do that, and that takes actually practice. It's not something like where you could just put in your mind. Well, you need to be thinking about it, but you just can't on the first time say, okay, well, I'm just going to switch gears. No, it has to be practiced. You have to really, truly feel that relaxed, not just think that you're doing it. It really has to happen. And it's hard. It's very hard to do,
Yeah.
especially if you're performing live and adrenaline is through the roof anyways.
Yeah. I remember I saw a video of you 2, 3, 4 weeks ago with your band playing live, and you did it quite well. You went into this rhythm part and you ripped off this awesome solo, and then you finish it off, and it was very nice transition there, um, in and out of there. So you definitely have that down really well. That was I forgot the song you were playing, but it was really cool. Solo was cool too. Was that with your Dio tribute band?
Yeah, my Ronnie James Dio tribute band. Yeah, it was the and it was the outro solo for Heaven and Hell, the song Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, the Sabbath song. Yeah, yeah.
Sabbath song. So there's a big long outro solo, and and then we ended up hitting the riff, the first half of the intro riff, and then we just end the song, and then we jump right into another song. Holy Diver.
Yeah, great. Too bad we don't live closer to each other. I'd love to come out and just hang out and watch the band.
It's a killer band.
Yeah. And you got a good drummer too. So
we got a great drummer.
Yeah, Mike.
We got a great drummer. We got our drummer Mike.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was actually sick as a dog, but he's a pro.
He sounds good.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. But the tension control thing, like you said, it's really hard, and it took me a long time to really be able to totally be able to do that. Especially in a live situation. It's really, really difficult because, as you know, being on stage is a totally hostile environment. It's not a welcoming place at all.
Especially if you're playing in New York.
It doesn't matter where you are. It's just not your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. And so, fortunately for me, I've played that venue before, so I knew what to expect. But still, it's not the comfort of my own home.
Yeah.
And and so it's a much different environment. So, you get one weird thing happen in your rig and add stress on top of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, getting back to the transition between lead rhythm, we talked before about tension and controlling yourself internally. But one way to practice this is to just alternate very quickly. You play a little rhythm part for, just 3 or 4 seconds, maybe even less than that, 2-3 seconds, and then you immediately go into the start of a lead. So what some people do when they're practicing is they'll play the whole song. They play the rhythm part, then comes the solo, then the solo ends, and they go back to the rhythm part. Well, that's all fine, but that takes now 4 or 5 minutes to make one transition from rhythm to lead and then lead back to rhythm. Let's practice that like 500 times in the next 15 minutes by just playing the little part, the rhythm part, and then going right into the lead, just the first 2 or 3 notes, and then play the last 2 or 3 notes of whatever that lead part's going to be. Okay. And then go right back into what the rhythm is. So you just alternate that. So let's imagine this is the whole song. Okay. And this is the solo here. So this is the rhythm part. That's the rhythm part. And this is the lead part. I would just practice this little slice here and that little slice there. That's it. So it might be the last 2 or 3 seconds of the rhythm part into the first 2 or 3 seconds of the lead part. Then I would skip all that. I would skip all of this and skip all of that. And I'm just doing this stuff here to go to the end of the lead, the last 2-3 seconds, maybe the last half of a lick or whatever, into the start of the rhythm. And what we're trying to do is control how we feel first. That's the starting point. And then control how much tension or aggression or adrenaline is needed, appropriate for each part. Then the technical stuff will kind of take care of itself most of the time. There may be other technical thing that has to be addressed, but the starting point is how you feel. Sometimes people get right here. They start getting tensed up because they know, oh, the solo's coming, the harder part's coming, assuming it's harder than the rhythm. And they start feeling, they anticipate this harder part, and then maybe they get a little nervous, or maybe they're excited. Oh, I finally get to play the solo, and now adrenaline gets up. Whether it's, apprehension about the solo, like, oh, I hope I'm going to get it right. I hope I'm going to nail it. It's either fear or it's adrenaline, like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait to get into this. Either one of those two emotional responses is going to make it harder to make that transition seamless and smooth and feel good in going into the solo and coming out of the solo. So those are really important aspects of making those changes. And you can just practice that. Just simulate the transition into the solo, the transition out of the solo. Don't bother playing the whole solo right now, because what needs to be practiced are these two seams here. Practice this, and then later you can do the whole tune or the whole solo or whatever.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that you taught me a long time ago. As a matter of fact, it's that only practice the transitions. Don't waste your time with the other stuff, because you'll get many more repetitions in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And you'll actually get more practice in a same finite amount of time, meaning clock, seconds on a clock kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just totally isolate a little before, a little after, and then do that over and over again. You could do that, whatever, 10, 20, 30 more times in the time it would take you just to play a longer section.
Sure. Yeah. The number of repetitions matters, because we can either sit here with our guitar and practice more hours every week, or we can just get the hard part done real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Just keep working on the bump in the road over and over and over again, instead of the whole thing. And there's the bump on the road is somewhere halfway between 2 minutes.
Right. And to work on the bump of the road until you've ground it down flat. And then, you're smooth sailing from there.
That's really, really, especially for anybody who's a busy person, full-time job, you know what I mean? Weekend warrior or aspiring, full-time guitar player, but you still got a day job. I mean, practice time is limited. So to really surgically isolate, whether it be a mistake or the tension control we're talking about, between your parts in this, but also generally speaking for all guitar practicing, you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours every day if you isolate just things that are bad.
Yeah. And one thing else I'll point out to what you said is a lot of people assume that pro level players or people who are actually pros have that playing guitar is their job. So that's what they get to do all day long. And they can practice 8 hours a day. I don't know about you, but I don't know any pro who practices 8 hours a day, because they don't have that kind of time. I mean,
they don't.
As a guitar player, I mean, there is so much that you have to do, which does not involve holding the guitar in your hand. You've got this whole career, this whole business that you have to manage. There's so much stuff going on that, I remember, being on tour, like the sound check was the most practicing I did most of the time. You warm up before the show and stuff, but there's so much stuff happening, all day into the night, that it's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit on the bus and, practice for 5 hours today. There's no time for that. On a day off, maybe. But when you're traveling, there's no time for that.
Yeah.
So I just pointed out, because sometimes people who are amateurs just assume that pro level players can play the guitar all day. Well, most of the time they can't, because they're way too busy, with everything else that's involved. That no, they have to make their practicing as efficient as can be, because if they don't have all day. So most people don't know that or don't realize that. They just assume that, Ingve can practice 10 hours a day all day every day. No, he can't. He doesn't have that kind of time.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when touring.
Yeah, when touring, you have to do press, promotion, radio interviews.
Find out where you're gonna take your shower. Who knows where it is in this venue?
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, that too. Yeah. I mean, you're pulled in several directions simultaneously all day. Right. It's like, I get to play my guitar.
With the agents. Yeah, it's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, phone calls, fires. You got to put out all kinds of stuff. Yes, totally agree.
And you never know what's going to happen the next day until you get there.
No, you don't know. That's why they call it the Book of Lies.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is efficiency of use the time you have as wisely as you can.
Yeah.
And if you've got a lot of time, great. Make the most of it. And if you don't have a lot, you can still make the most of that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you'd be amazed how much you can get done 10 minutes a day every day if it's every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Consistency is the key.
Yes, definitely. So, my last thing that I wanted to get your opinion on and your guidance is poor picking hand technique. So, what I'm specifically talking about is string noise and string muting control. Okay. So, what is it that you teach your students to be able to help control string noise and also to do string muting? So, I'm talking about obviously electric guitar, high gain, high volume situations. Your fingers are going a million miles an hour, but you can't hear anything because all your other strings are ringing crazy.
Yeah.
What?
Well, the first thing that I'll say is where you can hear, okay, the basis of this problem is either a lack of awareness or a lack of being bothered by noise. So I teach a lot of students, as you know, and you can see videos, especially past videos, where I would teach a student on stage at one of my events, Has Fest or one of the other ones. Okay. And I'll be teaching and demonstrating something. And when I'm done playing, my guitar's pretty much 100% quiet 100% of the time. But oftentimes, with some students, not all of them, but with some, when they're not playing, you hear the hiss coming out of the amp because they got left the volume on. You hear all kinds of little ticks and noises and squeaks and stuff when they're not, I'm not talking about when they're playing. I'm talking about when they're not playing. Okay. Now, to me, when I'm sitting there on the stage teaching someone like that or watching a video of that, that absolutely drives me nuts. I mean, that just drives me crazy. It doesn't drive me crazy because the noise bothers me. It drives me crazy because I know the noise is not bothering them. And as a player, as a teacher, it's my job to help them clean that up. So they should be bothered by it. They're sitting there with the guitar, they're not playing, the volume's on, the gain's on 10, and they're squeaking around and so on. You want that noise to bother you. Because if it doesn't bother you, there's no reason to fix it. There's no incentive to fix it. You're not even really aware of it. It's like when you go here, it's like this. You go to a restaurant with your wife, your girlfriend, whoever. Okay, you're trying to have a nice time. Saturday night, nice restaurant. Get yourself, $80 steaks, nice place. Okay. And then some other couple comes in with 4 little kids and they're running around, they're screaming, and it's bothering everybody else. It's bothering you. It's bothering your girlfriend, your wife, whatever. But you know who it doesn't bother? The parents of those kids running around screaming, because they don't hear it anymore. They live with that. So they're immune to the noise, to the mommy this, mommy that, crying, screaming, whining. It doesn't bother them. It always bothers me, but it doesn't bother them. Okay. And I had little kids. So, okay. But the point is this, it's like that with guitar. If it doesn't bother you, you're not going to really be able to fix it because you're not going to be constantly paying attention to it. Like, how do I keep the guitar quiet when it needs to be quiet? How am I going to keep it under control? How am I going to mute the string noise? Because you can tell someone all day long, you can give them the exact tools to use, the exact techniques to use. You can show them exactly what to do. But if they're not bothered by the noise, they're going to forget to use it. They're not going to use it consistently. So the biggest thing is they've just it's got to bother them. You want it to bother you so that you are pushed to solve the problem. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, once you are hopefully bothered by the noise and you are motivated to stop it because it drives you crazy and it sounds bad and you sound bad for you, then we could talk about the technique stuff. So all that stuff happens second. The technical stuff, what to do, happens second. Okay. So the first thing that I do when I'm not playing is I cover the guitar with both hands. So very often when I'm teaching, like what I told you at the events teaching, very often my guitar is not off. I don't turn the volume off. Sometimes I do, but I don't have to. Okay. If the guitar's covered and the guitar is covered here, all the strings are covered, you're not going to hear much. You might hear a little hiss out of the amp, but you're not going to hear squeaks and noises, and you're not going to hear that. You're not going to hear that kind of stuff because my guitar is well behaved. Okay, these are the two parents, well behaved. Okay, I'm half joking here, but you get the idea. Now, once it's time to move, I wouldn't move my hand and get that squeak. I would hold the guitar down, okay, lift the hand up, put it where it needs to go. Now it's in position. We want to avoid those kind of squeaks. Now let's talk about what happens when you do play. I'm going to plug my guitar in here so you can hear. All right. So I use a technique called thumb muting. Okay. So what this means is, so my amp is on. My gain is on 10. Okay, it's all the way up. Now, when I play a note, you only hear the note or the string I want you to hear. You don't hear any of that, okay? Now, the way that I keep it quiet is I'm using the thumb in the picking hand, and this thumb mutes all strings on this side of whatever string I'm playing. So if I'm playing string number 3, the thumb of the picking hand is muting strings 4, 5, and 6. It's just laying here on those strings, holding the pick. Okay, the thumb is lying on strings 4, 5, and 6. Just laying there. If I move from string 3 to string 1, now the thumb is muting strings 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And you don't hear this. This is what you would hear if I wasn't holding those strings down. You hear all that noise. That noise drives me nuts. I hate that noise. I want you to hear just what I want you to hear. Nothing else. Okay. My thumb is clamping everything down. You don't hear the other strings making noise. Now, what do you do with the strings that are higher than the ones you're playing? Okay. So if I'm on string 3 again, okay, my thumb is muting strings 4, 5, and 6. That's why you don't hear them. What's muting strings 1 and 2 right now are these fingers. Okay, these fingers here. So they're just resting on whatever strings are higher than the ones that I'm playing. So if I'm on string 3, these fingers are just resting. They're not anchored. They're not anchored to the guitar. They just go along for the ride. They just go along for the ride. All right. So if I'm on string 2, the middle finger is going to be on string 1, just resting there. Now, if I need to get to string 1 in a hurry, like I'm sweeping across, then my finger just goes away. Okay. If I come this way, then these fingers are just following along. They're not anchored on the guitar. They're not stiff. They just go along for the ride. Okay. That's it. So right now, if I slap all the strings, you only hear string 2 because the thumb is muting strings 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that's muting string 1. And string 2 is right here, allowed to ring freely. That's what I'm playing. So that's how I deal with that while playing. But really, the most important thing is it has to bother you. If it bothers you, if it drives you nuts, that's good. That's a good thing. If it doesn't bother you at all, something's wrong. And I guarantee you're playing it sloppy because the guitar is not under control because it doesn't bother you. Noise doesn't. It's like the parents with the little kids running around, jumping up and down off the table, hanging from the chandelier. They're completely immune to it. You don't want to play guitar like those parents parent at a restaurant full of people who want to have a nice time.
Very cool.
Don't send me any parent hate mail. Don't send it to me. Okay. Don't send it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I also just wanted to add that, what you're talking about also applies to playing chords that don't require you to span all six strings. So it isn't just specific to lead guitar. You
Yes.
may have to adjust and alter and everything. And obviously, maybe a thumb mute might not be the thing, but to use your other fingers to mute strings and things of that nature, all of this is still applicable to playing any kind of rhythm guitar as well. This is actually just universal advice on how to keep stuff quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if you, let's say we're playing here, if we don't want this, we don't want to hit the E string.
Yep.
Okay. I'm in this case for rhythm, I'm not going to be worried about being accurate in this hand.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to allow myself to be as inaccurate as I want to be because accuracy in this particular case is not what I'm concerned with. I'm only concerned with what comes out that amp and into people's ears. That's all I care about. So, one way you can fix it is be accurate. That's one way. But now you've got to be real careful, especially when you're doing stuff like it can be done. You can do it accurately, but all of a sudden you've made it harder for yourself. And if you're performing or recording, well, now you might start to be a little bit more timid, a little bit more, maybe too careful. Now you got to focus on the guitar and you can't just play and enjoy yourself and have a good time. Okay. But I can mute this string by having the tip of this finger just touching that string, which is what I was doing. So I am hitting that string, but you just don't hear it because that finger is muting it. So you hear a thud, but you hear the thud on all the strings because you're hearing the pick attack. And that thud doesn't bother you because it's going to be there anyway, because you're going to hear that for the pick attack. So that's one way you can do that. Some people wrap their thumb around. I don't typically do that unless I'm playing like a D chord, like an open D. I might do that to keep the E string quiet. But generally, I use the other fingers in the fretting hand most of the time. Yeah. I don't intentionally play wild and crazy and sloppy in this hand. I do make some attempt to be fairly accurate here, but I have an insurance policy over here in case a mistake is made, and I don't have to be so overly cautious. You're not going to hear. So when I was doing the lead guitar stuff, it was pretty clean. Okay. It doesn't mean that I have perfect technique. I don't. My technique's really good, but it's not perfect. Okay. But my insurance policy is that's muting the lower strings. These are muting the higher strings. And now if I make a flaw or mistake, you're not going to hear it. At least, I'm not saying you wouldn't hear any mistake I could possibly make, but you won't hear those kinds of mistakes. Extra strings ringing out because the guitar's locked down.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Muting can come from either hand depending upon your situation.
Absolutely. Or both.
Yeah. Or both. Absolutely. Both too. Yep. Yep. Well, this has been excellent. I really appreciate your time, Tom Hess.
Thank you.
All right. It's really been great to hear this again. I have actually heard a lot of this stuff over and over and over again, and it's always great to hear again and again and again, because what you're talking about is fundamentals. And really, to me, it's fundamentals. And, you can never hear enough of it. If you've heard this before, that's great. Maybe you forgot it. And you're being reminded, just like me. Oh, yeah, that's right. I got to focus on that a little bit more. So if you've never heard any of this stuff, all I got to say is it works, because everything that I know, I learned from this guy right here. I've implemented it, and it works out great for me. And it works out great for my students who I teach that to as well. So I really appreciate all of your knowledge.
My pleasure. Glad to be here and talk with you. It's cool.
Yes. Very cool. Well, before we go, we were talking about switching between rhythm and lead playing earlier, and I actually have something that I can offer for free. and it's the beginner's guide to adding lead guitar elements to your rhythm playing. So what this free e-guide does for you is it will show you a simple way how to go from playing chords to some single note phrases back to chords. And it's really easy. It's totally introductory. If you've ever wondered, how do people do this? How do they pick the notes that they're playing? Which notes should I play? This is a step-by-step guide that will get you started on how to do that. It's got tab all written out. It has audio samples of what it's supposed to sound like. It's very, very easy. So if that always seemed to be a mystery to you of how people kind of jam these single notes in between chords and how do they make it sound good and which notes do they pick, this is definitely going to get you started going down that path.
Yeah, and that's a really good resource. I've seen the whole thing myself. It is very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I have that, rhythmguitarlessons.net/pro, just like you saw it on the screen. If you missed it, watch the replay of this. Hopefully you'll pick the right link to see the broadcast, because apparently we had two going on simultaneously, but then one went away. So, but anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. And I want to say thank you and goodbye to everybody who was checking us out here live.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mark.